What if I told you that the person holding the keys to your home could become your jailer? That the landlord you trusted could trap you inside your own residence, weaponizing the very walls meant to shelter you? This isn't a horror movie. This isn't fiction. This happened in Harris County, Texas, and what unfolded inside that townhouse will shake you to your core. A maintenance worker walked into what should have been a routine repair and found himself locked in a nightmare that lasted over an hour. The landlord, the person supposed to maintain safety, allegedly turned off the power, cut the water, locked steel gates with keys on both sides, and when he begged to leave, she told him to shut up. And here's the terrifying part. There was no way out, no back door, no window, just heat, darkness, and the chilling realization that someone else controlled whether he would ever leave that house alive. If you've ever felt powerless, if you've ever been trapped in a situation where someone else held all the control, you need to hear this story. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, because what happened in that courtroom will leave you speechless. August 5th, 2024, started like any ordinary summer day in Harris County, Texas. The sun blazed down with that brutal Texas heat that makes the air shimmer and stick to your skin. But inside a modest townhouse complex, something far more sinister than the weather was unfolding. A project manager at the complex made a 911 call that would expose a shocking abuse of power. The words she spoke weren't about a break-in or a medical emergency. She reported a hostage situation. Let that sink in. A hostage situation at a residential property involving a landlord and her own maintenance worker. The reporting party described a woman wearing lab privileges attire and a face mask, someone who had allegedly locked one of her own employees inside a townhouse against his will. But this wasn't a random act of violence. This was calculated. This was about control. This was about eviction by terror. The backstory makes it even more disturbing. The landlord, Miss Ibasi, had been waging a quiet war against her tenants. She wanted them out, but she didn't want to go through the legal eviction process. So instead, she allegedly chose psychological warfare. She cut the power. She shut off the water. She made living in that unit so unbearable that she hoped the tenants would simply give up and leave on their own. This is called constructive eviction, and it's illegal in most states. You can't force someone out by making their home unlivable. But Miss Ibasi didn't stop there. When the maintenance man, the complaining witness in this case, showed up to check on the tenants and restore their utilities, he walked into a trap. What was supposed to be a welfare check became his own personal hell. And the most chilling detail? The townhouse had steel gates with key locks on both sides. Not a simple latch you can unlock from the inside, not a push button, key locks on both sides. Which means, if someone locked you in and took the key, you weren't getting out. You were at their mercy.
Imagine being that maintenance worker. You knock on the door, you enter the property to do your job, to help people who've been living without power and water. You're just trying to make things right. And suddenly, you hear the click of a lock behind you. You turn around, and the landlord is standing there. The front gate is locked. You check the back patio door, also locked. Both require keys you don't have. The air conditioning isn't running because the power's been cut. The temperature inside is climbing. You can feel the sweat starting to bead on your forehead. Your chest tightens. You ask to leave. She tells you to sit down. You ask again. She tells you to shut up. And then, in a moment that must have frozen his blood, she made a motion toward her purse, a motion he interpreted as reaching for a gun. Whether she actually had a weapon or not, the threat was clear. You're not leaving until I say so. For 1 hour and 20 minutes, this man was trapped inside that sweltering townhouse. 1 hour and 20 minutes of not knowing if he would get out, of wondering if anyone would come, of feeling his sense of safety, his sense of autonomy, completely stripped away. This wasn't a landlord having a bad day. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was alleged unlawful restraint, a criminal charge that carries up to a year in jail and a $4,000 fine. And here's what makes this case so powerful. There was video evidence. The complainant had recorded part of the encounter. In that footage, you can hear him asking to leave, multiple times. And you can hear her telling him to shut up. Those words, captured on camera, became the smoking gun that would bring Miss Abbasi into Judge Flisher's courtroom. When the police arrived, the maintenance worker had escaped just 5 minutes earlier. Somehow he'd gotten out, though the reports don't specify exactly how. Maybe she finally unlocked the gate. Maybe he found another way. But he was free. Shaken, traumatized, but free. The officers spoke with him, with the tenant still inside, with the project manager who'd made that initial call. The story they heard was consistent. This wasn't a he said, she said situation. This was corroborated by multiple witnesses, by video evidence, by the physical layout of the property itself. Those double-keyed locked gates, the shut-off utilities, the pattern of harassment, it all painted a picture of someone who had crossed the line from property owner to alleged captor. If you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, that sense of injustice, hit that like button, because we're just getting started, and what happens in the courtroom is where this story truly reveals its weight. The courtroom scene on the morning Miss Abbasi appeared before Judge Flisher was tense from the very first moment. The judge noticed something immediately. Miss Abbasi was recording the proceedings on her phone. In most courtrooms, this is a violation. The judge asked her to put it away. She complied, but that small act of defiance set the tone. When Judge Flisher asked if she had an attorney, Miss Abbasi confirmed that she did, someone named Rayhan. But then came the kicker. He wasn't going to show up that day. So here she was, facing a charge of unlawful restraint, looking at potential jail time, and her lawyer was a no-show. The judge proceeded with the probable cause hearing anyway, and what unfolded was a masterclass in judicial patience mixed with barely concealed concern.
The prosecutor laid out the facts methodically. The 911 call, the locked gates, the maintenance worker's testimony, the video evidence showing him repeatedly asking to leave and being told to shut up. But Judge Flisher wasn't satisfied with just hearing the narrative. She wanted to understand the mechanics of what happened. How exactly do you trap someone inside a townhouse? The explanation was chilling in its simplicity. The townhouse had steel security gates, the kind meant to keep intruders out. But these gates had key locks on both the front and back exits. No interior release, no push-button escape. If you didn't have the key, you were stuck. The judge's confusion was palpable. She asked multiple times how someone can be trapped inside their own home because the concept seemed so fundamentally wrong. It violated fire code. It violated basic safety standards. And most importantly, it violated this man's freedom. The prosecutor explained that the maintenance worker had tried both exits. Front gate, locked. Back patio door, locked. He was effectively caged inside a home that was getting hotter by the minute with no air conditioning in the middle of a Texas summer. The judge pressed for more details. How long was he in there? 1 hour and 20 minutes. How did he get out? The reports didn't specify, but he escaped 5 minutes before police arrived. Did the landlord let him go? Unclear. Was she inside with him the whole time? Yes. And that's when the prosecutor dropped another disturbing detail. During the confrontation, Miss Abbasi made a motion toward her purse that the maintenance worker believed indicated she had a gun. Whether she was armed or not, the implication of violence hung in the air like smoke. Judge Flisher's demeanor shifted throughout the hearing. She started with procedural questions, trying to understand the mechanics of the alleged crime. But as more details emerged, her concern deepened. She wanted to hear Miss Abbasi's side of the story. She explicitly said she wasn't ready to rule yet, that she wanted to give the defendant a chance to present her version of events once her attorney arrived. But Missy Bossy invoked her right to remain silent. She wanted to wait for her lawyer. And Judge Flisher respected that. She told her to take a seat and let them know when her attorney showed up. But here's the problem. As the hearing continued, it became clear that the lawyer might not be coming at all. Time passed, no attorney. The judge eventually had to make a decision. After reviewing all the evidence, the video, the witness statements, the physical impossibility of the maintenance worker leaving on his own without a key, Judge Flisher made her ruling. She found probable cause to move forward with the charge, but she also did something interesting. She told both parties that if new evidence developed in the future, they could come back and re-argue probable cause. She wasn't closing the door completely. She was leaving room for the truth to evolve. But in the meantime, she set clear conditions. Missy Bossy was ordered to have no contact with the complaining witness, no weapons, no new criminal cases. Follow these rules, and she could remain free pending trial. Violate them, and a warrant would be issued immediately. The judge even waived her requirement to appear in future court dates since she had an attorney, but she warned, "If your attorney tells me he can't reach you, if you're playing games, I will issue that warrant. Do you understand?" Missy Bossy nodded. She understood. But there was one more wrinkle in this case, one more detail that could change everything. The body cam footage from the responding officers. The defense attorney, when he finally made contact with the court, filed a motion to obtain that footage. He wanted to see exactly what the police found when they arrived. What did the witnesses say in those immediate moments? What did the scene look like? Was there any exculpatory evidence that could help his client? The prosecutor objected. She said the body cam footage was part of an ongoing investigation. She needed to consult with the investigator before releasing it. The judge gave them 2 weeks to sort it out. If the prosecution was going to retrieve the footage anyway as part of their case preparation, the defense should get access too. If not, she'd grant the defense motion to obtain it independently. Either way, that footage was going to become a critical piece of evidence. And here's why. Video doesn't lie. If that body cam showed the maintenance worker visibly distressed, if it showed the locked gates, if it captured his immediate recounting of being trapped and threatened, it would corroborate everything he'd said. But if the footage showed something different, if there were inconsistencies or alternative explanations, it could shift the entire narrative of the case. Think about what this case represents on a deeper level. It's about power. It's about the imbalance that exists between landlords and tenants, between employers and employees, between those who hold the keys and those who depend on them for access. This maintenance worker wasn't some stranger off the street. He worked for the property management company. He was there to help. And allegedly, his act of trying to restore basic utilities to suffering tenants resulted in him being held against his will for over an hour. What does that say about how some people view others? What does that say about the lengths someone might go to in order to maintain control over a situation that's slipping away from them? Miss Bossy wanted those tenants out. She wanted them gone badly enough that she allegedly made their home unlivable. And when someone came to undo her sabotage, she allegedly made him a prisoner. The emotional weight of this case isn't just in what happened that day. It's in what it represents for anyone who's ever felt powerless, for every tenant who's had a landlord abuse their authority, for every employee who's been trapped in a situation where they couldn't leave, for everyone who's experienced that gut-wrenching moment when you realize someone else has taken your freedom, even temporarily, and there's nothing you can do about it. That feeling of helplessness, that rising panic, that desperate need to just get out, to be somewhere safe, to breathe freely again. This maintenance worker lived through that for 80 minutes. 80 minutes that probably felt like an eternity. And when he finally escaped, when he finally got out of that townhouse, He didn't just walk away. He called the police. He made sure there was a record. He made sure this couldn't happen to someone else. The legal implications of this case are significant. Unlawful restraint is a serious charge because it strikes at one of our most fundamental rights, the freedom to move, to leave, to not be imprisoned by another private citizen. The state of Texas takes this seriously. A year in jail isn't a slap on the wrist. A $4,000 fine isn't pocket change. And the criminal record that comes with a conviction can follow someone for the rest of their life. But beyond the legal penalties, there's the moral weight of what allegedly happened here. If the allegations are true, Miss Abbasi didn't just break the law, she broke trust. She violated the social contract that says we don't get to cage other human beings just because we're frustrated or angry or desperate to achieve an outcome. We live in a society of laws precisely so that we don't resort to this kind of behavior. We have eviction courts. We have legal processes. We have ways to resolve disputes that don't involve locking someone in a sweltering house and refusing to let them leave. As this case moves forward, there are still so many unanswered questions. What will that body camera footage show? Will it support the prosecution's narrative completely, or will there be details that complicate the story? Will Miss Abbasi's attorney present a defense that explains her actions in a way that makes sense? Or will this be a case where the evidence is simply too overwhelming to overcome? What about the tenants who were living in that unit without power and water? What happened to them? Did they ever get back into their home? Did they pursue their own legal action for the constructive eviction they endured? And what about the maintenance worker himself? How is he doing now, months after that terrifying day? Has he been able to return to work? Or does he carry the psychological scars of being trapped? Does he hesitate before entering a property now? Does he make sure he always has a way out? These are the human questions that linger long after the legal proceedings conclude. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a case about unlawful restraint. It's a case about what happens when someone with a little bit of power decides to wield it as a weapon. It's about the moment when a property dispute becomes a criminal act. It's about the thin line between frustration and cruelty, between self-interest and sadism. And it's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous situations aren't the ones we see coming. They're the ones that unfold in ordinary places, in townhouses and rental properties, behind closed doors and locked gates. They're the situations where we trust someone because of their position, because of their role, and that trust gets shattered in the worst possible way.
If this story has affected you, if you've felt that anger rising in your chest, that sense of injustice, that empathy for a man who just wanted to help and ended up trapped, then this story has done its job. Because these cases matter. They matter because they remind us that the law exists to protect the vulnerable, to hold the powerful accountable, to ensure that no one, regardless of their position or their property ownership, gets to take away another person's freedom. They matter because they show us that even when someone is trapped, even when the situation seems hopeless, there are consequences. There is justice. There are judges like Judge Flisher who will listen, who will demand answers, who will not let these acts go unpunished. So here's what I want you to do. If this case moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel something deep in your gut, hit that like button right now. Leave a comment telling me your theory about what really happened in that townhouse. Do you think the body camera footage will support the maintenance worker's story completely? Do you think there's more to this case than we know? What would you have done if you were trapped like that? How do we prevent this kind of abuse of power from happening to others? And most importantly, where are you watching from? Are there similar landlord-tenant issues in your area? Have you ever experienced something like this? Your voice matters, your perspective matters, and by engaging with this story, by sharing it, by discussing it, you're helping to shine a light on cases that might otherwise be forgotten. This is the power of true crime storytelling done right. It's not about sensationalism, it's not about exploiting tragedy for views, it's about honoring the experiences of real people who went through something traumatic and making sure their stories are heard. It's about holding up a mirror to society and saying, look at this. Look at what happened here. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. The maintenance worker who walked into that townhouse on August 5th, 2024, deserves to have his story told. He deserves to know that people care about what happened to him, that his 80 minutes of terror weren't in vain, that his willingness to come forward, to testify, to face his alleged captor in court has meaning. In Miss Ibisy, she deserves her day in court. She deserves the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. She deserves to present her side of the story, to explain her actions, to have a jury of her peers weigh the evidence and make a determination about her guilt or innocence. That's how the justice system works. That's what separates us from vigilante justice and mob rule. But she also deserves to understand the gravity of what she's accused of, the seriousness of allegedly taking away someone's freedom, the weight of allegedly weaponizing her position as a landlord to terrorize both her tenants and her own employee. If she did these things, if the evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt that she locked that man in and refused to let him leave, then she needs to face the full consequences of her actions. Thank you for following this story from that initial 911 call all the way through the courtroom hearing. Thank you for caring about a maintenance worker you've never met, for feeling his fear, for understanding why this case matters. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because we have more stories that deserve to be heard. Stories of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. Stories of justice delayed and justice served. Stories that will make you think, make you feel, and make you question what you thought you knew about right and wrong. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your theories, and your final takeaway in the comments below. What's the lesson here? Is it about being careful who we trust with power? Is it about the importance of having witnesses and evidence? Is it about the courage it takes to come forward when someone has wronged you? Tell me what you think. And remember, every comment, every like, every share helps these stories reach more people, helps ensure that the victims are remembered and the accused are held accountable. This is true crime with purpose. This is storytelling that matters. And I'll see you in the next one.